Hey everyone, welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns and I'm really happy to be here with you today. So I'm trying something different with my lighting. Y'all let me know if it's really as grainy as it looks now. Notice a little pointing out, I almost said bad. I said, does it look as bad, right? But it only looks bad to me, right? Because I'm comparing it to something that looks good, which is this fancy dancy iPhone that I have here that's plugged in, so I can't reach and show it to you like I was going to. Um, but the idea is that this might be preferable for someone else, right? I've actually gotten some comments from people who have thanked me for dimming the set a little bit because they have glare issues, right? So, so here I am saying that this is bad, but somebody else is sitting here saying, well, it's actually good. So the idea then is as a matter of, mindfulness practice, what we can do is become mindful of that language, right? And we can sort of challenge ourselves is what it really is, because saying bad is the easy thing. Right? It's aversive. I don't like this, so it's bad, right? But if I take that word out, if I don't allow myself to use that word, right? Well, then what would I use? I could use the word grainy, because that's how it looks on my computer screen right now. It looks very pixelated and grainy and sort of, soft focus. It looks low quality. All of those are objective comments or understandings, right? There's nothing subjective, nothing opinionated, nothing judgment based about any of those. But when I say the word bad, well, that's just what I feel about it, right? And this ties into what I want to talk about here in the first segment, which is this wonderful quote that I wrote down in my notebook. I scribbled in my notebook. I mean, I'm not going to show you my handwriting, because even with this graininess on my screen, if it's showing up for you that way, which I don't know that it is, this is really, I mean, my handwriting is illegible under the best of circumstances, and this is even more illegible than usual for me. But I must have written it so fast. I might have been like in the car at a red light or something like that, or doing something else, and I just scribbled it down. And I did not write who the quote is from. So I'm going to quote this as an unknown source. All right. And if anybody knows this quote and knows who wrote it or who said it, please tell me so I can give proper credit. Okay. Because it's really a beautiful quote. It's very simple, but it's beautiful. A person who isn't at peace with themselves will be at war with the rest of the world. And so how does that tie into the non-judging awareness that I was just talking about? You see, it's important for us to understand that when we're when we're going out into the world, right? Whatever we're doing, whether we're going to the store or we're going to the bank, or we're going to work, or we're going just for a walk, right? We're interacting with the world, right? But it's not like there's like this, it's not like we're Superman, where we put on our Clark Kent suit and go out and interact with the world as Clark Kent and then become Superman when the time arises, right? Most of us don't have that kind of control. And so what we're doing is we're out there interacting with the world from where we are in any given moment. And what does that mean, right? So another very famous quote, I think it's pretty famous, at least famous to me, but another one that I don't know who the original, writer or author is. The quote is that we experience the world not as the world is, we experience the world as we are. Which is to say that if you go out in the morning, right, and you're feeling dysregulated for some reason, maybe you didn't have enough coffee. Maybe you didn't have enough sleep. Maybe you had too much coffee. Maybe you had too much sleep. Maybe you overslept and you're feeling an emotional shame over having overslept, and you're feeling fear because of your job and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, whether we like it or not, or, whether we want it to be there or not, that's the state of your body in that moment. So whatever's going on, right? pardon me, that is how you are going to interact with whatever's going on. And so if you are in a place of internal conflict, internal strife, then in all likelihood, that is what you're going to find out in the world. You know, the clerk at the store is going to say something that could be very objective, but because of your state, you're going to interpret it as something hurtful or aggressive or impolite or disrespectful. On and on goes the list. And of course, it's bad. It's difficult and damaging enough if that happens to an anonymous person like a clerk at a store. I mean, we're not dismissing that, and we're not saying it's okay, right? The clerk at the store deserves your compassion and your kindness 100%, right? But the trouble is that this extends to everything, including our children, our spouses, our loved ones, our friends, our superiors even, right? At work or whatever. I don't mean anybody's ever superior to you, but I mean people at work who are in superior positions, right? And so what does this mean, right? Why is this important? Well, it's important to know, right? It's important to know that okay, I'm going out today and I'm feeling very anxious right now. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my chest, right? I feel a tension in my chest, and I feel like I'm wound tight like a spring. So why is this important? Well, now I can go through my day recognizing that if I just let things go, I'm going to be at war with the world. Right? I'm going to see conflict, and I'm going to see strife, and I'm going to see difficulty in every single situation. So what I can do is I can balance that out by recognizing it, right? I can recognize that if this is what I'm experiencing, well, I can be ready for it, right? And so maybe I don't say something, right? Or maybe I choose not to run that specific errands today. Maybe I choose to go to the bank next week, on my day off when I'm in maybe a different state of physical and emotional, wellness, right? Or maybe I choose to make sure that I don't say something to my, preteen or teenage children, knowing that whatever I hear from them is triggering me. And so I can intentionally say, don't say anything. Protect yourself until you're in a place where you can interact from your true nature, because that's the problem, right? That when I'm reacting from that place of irritation or tension or anger or whatever it is, the world's not getting me. They're not getting Art Burns. They're getting Art Burns' anger, Art Burns' tension. And quite frankly, you're better off with the real thing. And so the idea is that we can, again, the idea always is about the awareness, right? It's about bringing a deeper, non-judging awareness to my own state. Feeling into myself, not just going through whatever I have to go through. And I'm not saying that you're not going to go to work. You got to go to work, right? We got to take the kids to school. We got to do all the things, right? It's not like we can just, say, okay, I think we should live in a world where we can say, I'm not mentally well today, so I need to stay home, and that would be okay. But it's not okay in the current world we're living in, not in this timeline, right? And so we got to do the things, right? But there's no reason why we can't do those things with an awareness and a wisdom that comes from that awareness, right? And the wisdom is what I'm talking about here, is that I can choose not to engage my daughter's teacher at school today because of how I'm feeling. I can choose to do that tomorrow in the hopes that I'll be feeling better. And again, understanding why I'm not feeling well, right? Again, is it a sleep problem? Okay, then tonight I can get more sleep and be in a better position tomorrow to handle this conversation. Is it too much or too little coffee or caffeine? Well, then I can make that adjustment. right? Is it eating? Is it drinking? Is it something else happening in my life right now? Has my trauma been triggered somehow? Does this very situation trigger my trauma? Because resolving my trauma is part of becoming at peace with myself. Right? So is understanding my caffeine intake levels. So is understanding my sleep. So is understanding my hydration. So is understanding my exercise, my meditation, on and on and on. Right? And that's where we practice things like loving kindness, right? Where we can go out into the world and we can just deliberately bring this attitude of loving kindness, no matter how we're feeling in ourselves. And that alone, that process of bringing loving kindness brings us into peace with ourselves, and then ceases the war that we're at with the rest of the world. Now, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about how what we're not saying here is like some kind of bypass, right? We're not saying that, we're not saying that we're going to avoid emotions, or we're going to avoid stress, or we're going to suppress any of these things. I mean, yeah, we can avoid stress. That's okay. But we're not suppressing it, right? We're not saying like shoving it down inside, because that, as I'm going to tell you in the next segment, leads to far, far greater problems. All right, I'll be right back. Back for segment number 2. I made a video this morning, a TikTok video about this subject this morning. And I thought it'd be nice to talk about here. And it really does tie into what I was talking about in the last segment, right? And what I'm talking about here is the concept of spiritual bypass. I got into a little exchange. I made a couple of comments on somebody else's video the other day who was also talking about spiritual bypass. I wasn't calling somebody out. That's not my style. I don't do that in the comments. I might send a direct message to somebody in a compassionate and kind way, but you'll never see me get into like an argument in people's comments, because again, just like we said, in the last segment, most people in those arguments are operating from a place of dysregulation. And so there's no amount of arguing in the world that's going to convince them of anything, or allow for any kind of exchange of ideas, right? Because when two people are dysregulated having an argument, they're just both screaming and nothing's being listened to, right? There's no exchange. It's just a one-way street kind of thing, right? So we know that that's no good, right? We know that that's not going to end up with anything that is positive or constructive or anything like that, right? And so when we take that step a little step further, there is a certain let's say a certain community within the greater spiritual community, right? Who, and literally, I did not share this on my Instagram, right? I only shared it on TikTok this morning when I made this video, which is very rare for me, but I did so as a calculated move because, even some of the people that I know, right, that are on my Facebook, for instance, right, and even some spiritual teachers that I know, right, that they talk about things in the sense of, like anger is an emotion that should be avoided, right? Sometimes you'll hear it talked about like as a low frequency, right, and that we should be operating at a higher frequency. Right. I even have one person I know who is also a teacher who says that that she's seen people lose weight when they stop being angry. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong if you're telling me that. I don't know what other factors were involved. I mean, I don't have all the information to even challenge it, But the trouble with that concept, though, the trouble when we identify, anger, for instance, and it really does come up as anger. I know I'm mentioning anger here, but that is where we see this spiritual bypass, or also known as bliss bypass, and often associated with the concept or the term toxic positivity. Right. And anger is a place where we see this a lot, right? Because but sadness too, but anger is something that we all experience, right? And quite frankly, in this world, if you're not experiencing some anger, I don't know if you're really paying attention enough. you know? And that's exactly the point of spiritual bypass, right? Spiritual bypass is where, the idea being that, that I can operate at a higher frequency for myself, right? I can eschew any negative emotions, and I can just focus on being positive, and I can focus on being happy, and I can focus on higher vibrational, frequencies, right? And what is that? Right? Like, let's really just look at it just very objectively. What is that? That's just basically slicing out a huge part of your experience, right? And one of the things that I talk about here all the time is how important our emotions are. All of our emotions, right? I mean, all of them are important, because remembering that our emotions, the physical sensations that they affect, and the thoughts that are associated with that whole process, right? They're doing that for a reason, right? They're doing it all in response to our experience. So if there's something in your experience that is eliciting the emotion of anger, or sadness, or jealousy, or whatever it is, right? Now, okay, if there's something in your life that's eliciting these things, well, then it's real, right? It's really happening. Now, there's a very, very important aspect here that is sort of where we get into like a little Venn diagram, overlay here, right? Where if we are in a place of anger, well, then that anger needs to go somewhere, right? The anger needs to be expressed. The anger needs to be acted upon on some level, even if that is meditating so that you calm your body down, right? But the key here is that it's never, ever, ever about saying anger is bad. Now, you have the choice whether you express that anger, you let that anger, allow it to blossom, right? Which in some cases might be the exact thing that you want to do. Jack Kornfield tells a great story. You know how I love quoting Jack. He tells a story about when his wife and he were having some work done on their house, some renovations to their kitchen or something like that, and the contractor was running very late. And there was one point where they were like a few days away from going on vacation, and they really wanted to get this done before they left. And the guy had promised that it would be done like weeks earlier. And so Jack Kornfield actually got on the phone and like yelled at the guy and said, if this isn't done by next week, I'm hauling your ass into court. And you know what happened? The guy didn't like say, oh, well, you're big meanie, I'm not doing it now. No, he actually said, whoa, you really need this, huh? Like, this is really, I didn't realize it was that important to you. So you see, the anger was actually the most effective way that he could communicate in that position, in that circumstance. Conversely, if I'm going out to Target today to get some stuff, and although I'm not because it's snowing like crazy out here, so I'm staying inside. But if I were to go out to the store today and like having a problem with something, and somebody comes, like, say, like with the self-checkout thing, right? It's not working. That happens sometimes, right? And so somebody has to come over, and quite frequently, there's only so many people that are working there, and right now people don't want to work for low wages anymore, and so they have less people working, which is good, right? That's a positive thing, that people are demanding better wages. But if I get angry, right? But again, it's okay for me to feel the anger. It's okay for me to be frustrated that I have to stand here waiting. This sucks. I don't like it. But here's the thing. In that moment, to express that anger on this poor kid who's making $15 and doing the best they can, that's not an appropriate way for me to use my anger. It's not going to end in anything that's positive. It's not going to end in a resolution of a problem. In fact, it's only going to create further problems. Because either that person's going to say, well, I don't have to help you if you're yelling at me, and walk away from me, leaving me still with a problem, or I'll experience the shame later on of saying, oh, why was I so mean to that person? But either way, it's ending me up in a place that is more problems, not fewer problems. So really, it becomes about emotional intelligence. It becomes about emotional wisdom. It becomes about understanding the anger, understanding, as we talked about in the last segment, where that anger is coming from, understanding how this anger, or whatever, I'm using anger, but it's any emotion, right? Understanding how this emotion is impacting this other person that I'm talking to, and using this information to make a wise decision. Yes, let my anger go, or no, don't. But in either case, it's not saying anger's bad. Don't be angry. Okay, because quite frankly, even beyond the spirituality of this, this is a whole book written, okay, by Dr. Gabor Mate, world-renowned doctor, author, speaker, teacher, pediatrician, obstetrician rather, not pediatrician, obstetrician. I was thinking of Dan Siegel. This whole book, When the Body Says No, exploring the stress-disease connection, right? It's basically a collection of stories that he's telling of people who, never were able to express their anger in a reasonable and constructive way. They were always made to feel shame over feeling their anger. They were not allowed to express it. They were made to suppress it. They were made to feel as though anger did not belong ever, any time. And you know where Dr. Mate met these folks? In the palliative care ward. So one of the amazing things about Dr. Mate's career is that he's spent time as a doctor bringing people into the world, and he spent time guiding them out of the world. And in the guiding out of the world, he met all of these people in this book. 15 people or something with autoimmune diseases, cancers, life-ending diseases that all arise from the inability to not suppress, but their inability to understand and process their emotions. So if you find yourself with a teacher who is talking about, this sort of lower frequency, avoiding lower frequency emotions and stuff, if they're telling you that, that the anger and sadness and stuff, those are, low frequency emotions and you shouldn't be feeling those, right? If you find somebody saying that kind of stuff, I want you to think of it, look at it as a red flag, okay? And then come and talk to your old pal Art, okay? And let me help you understand it a little bit better. Okay, it's not always going to be, some people, there is some truth to all of this, right? So it's not yes or no, on or off, digital, binary. It's analogic, right? And it really depends on how the teachers, because even here one could say, well, you're contradicting yourself, So it's non-dualistic, right? It's not that, that anger is never good, and it's not that it's always good, right? Or always helpful, never helpful, right? And there is some truth to optimism and to operating in positive emotions. There is a very strong scientific benefit to that. But it can't come at the expense of ignoring the negative emotions. And even the positive psychologists will tell you that, like Barbara Friedrichsen, right? Barbara Friedrichsen, who I told you, she likens it to a boat, right? Where a sailboat, right? Where everything you see above the water is positive emotions. But under the water, there's a big, long keel. And without that keel, the sailboat cannot navigate through the water. It will just be pushed whichever way the wind is going, right? And so while most of the emotions are positive, there's more area between the waterline and the top of the mast, and there's maybe a third of that area below the water. Without that third of the area that's below the water, we're living an aimless life, right? We're living a life that's just adrift. We're not grounded. Our emotions are what ground us. And I'll leave you with one quote that I do know the author of, which is that an unexamined life is not worth living. And that quote is really old. That comes from Marcus Aurelius, known as the last great Roman emperor. And he was a big fan of meditation. He wrote a whole book called Meditations. You should check it out. It's really fascinating. And so the idea is when we're experiencing negative emotions, and again, negative does not say bad, when we're experiencing the emotions that are on the negative end of that spectrum, we should examine them. We should be curious about them. We should seek to understand them, not run away and avoid and stuff them into a hole somewhere. Because they're not going to go away. They're going to come back stronger and stronger and stronger, even if that's in the form of a crushing illness. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll be back again hopefully tomorrow. We'll see you then. Take care. Oh, and let me know about the lighting. Is it positive, negative? What do we think? I really want to know. Thank you.